very, very big thank you. Okay, thank you so much for Ms. Kopel for opening up your beautiful new home that has been in the working for a while. Okay. And so Mazal Tov to you on the new home. And in Bezrat Hashem, there should be only continued growth in Torah and more continued Torah, Bezrat Hashem, in this beautiful home with the entire family together, Bezrat Hashem. We're approaching Purim. We're approaching Purim. Rosh Chodesh is coming up in a few days, and I was really going back and forth as to what to talk about for the pre-Purim Shiur, because we're going to be doing Rosh Chodesh benching on Shabbos, and in many shuls there's going to be like some lively singing, okay, and on Rosh Chodesh, etc. And then Purim, it's a very exciting time, and then here I am, and I come out with, what do I write? The most depressing topic out there, right? About anti-Semitism, and it's like, you're like killing the whole, Moskowitz is killing everything, okay? So I wasn't sure what to do, I was torn, but I really was thinking about it, and I felt that it's such an important topic, especially with what's going on these days, with current events, and what is happening. And the reality is that as anti-Semitism and all the hatred that's been going on recently, with all of that been going on, I personally was thinking about it myself. I was like, what am I supposed to be thinking? Like, as a Jew, as a religious Jew, as, like, just, what am I supposed to be thinking? What am I supposed to be feeling? And as we know, the Purim story is filled, it's all about anti-Semitism and Haman and Achashverosh and their attempt to kill the Jews. And unfortunately, that's really what we're experiencing these days. And the stats, if you start to read the stats, it actually gets pretty depressing, because there was a study that was done that said that in 2014, okay, which is going back a number of years already, there were 609 anti-Jewish hate crimes that were reported to the FBI. 609, 2014. 4 years later, by 2018. The number increased 40% to 835 incidents that's what was reported to the FBI. The ADL claims that in 2019, okay, they don't have the actual numbers yet, the official stats, but in 2019 they feel that there's going to be a 20% increase. I mean, once they get the numbers out there from their experience of what happened, and this is a worldwide issue. I read an article. It was so sad. I read an article about a shul in Europe that as a result of all the anti-Semitism that's going on, they decided to take down their shulzmanim from their website. They decided to take down the times of davening because they're just scared. I don't know, is it the right thing, is it not the right thing? I have no idea. Who am I to judge? But it's scary if that's where we're holding. And this is not something that's going on in America. As you know, this is not only in America, this is a worldwide thing. In the past year alone, okay, the following incidents took place. And I'm just going to read them from the research that I did in France. There was an Israeli student that was beaten unconscious on the subway just because he was speaking Hebrew on the phone. There were over 100 graves in France that were found covered with swastikas and anti-Semitic graffiti. In Berlin, there are police investigating an attack that happened in a fitness studio where there was a fellow who tore off a teenager's kippah in the locker room. He called him a dirty Jew, and he exclaimed, "Free Palestine" to everybody. This is all in the past year. In Sweden, there were yellow stickers with the word Jude written on them, resembling the Nazi yellow stars, and they were actually placed. These stickers were placed on the Jewish Community Center in Stockholm, and the Great Synagogue of Stockholm, and on other Jewish institutions over there. Those stickers resembling what the Nazis did. In the Netherlands, there was a Jewish man, his name is Jorem, who was assaulted, and but worse than the assault, there were 50 people who were standing around as he was being assaulted, singing a song about gassing the Jews, while they were pushing and they were kicking, and they were verbally assaulting this fellow with anti-Semitic speech. And last Pesach was actually Erev Pesach. Not Erev Pesach. On the night of Pesach in Moscow, in Russia, there was a fire that was set to the largest yeshiva in Moscow. It's called Torah Chaim, and there were swastikas that were sprayed all over the yeshiva. And that's in the rest of the world. And what's happening here in America? We're all very well aware. We all know what happened in Jersey City with the death of Mendel Ferenc and Moshe Deutsch and the other people who were murdered in the store. I believe the story is, my understanding was that the guys were really trying to get into the school, into the cheder that was right next door, but thank God they weren't able to get in there. But they ended up murdering Jews in the store. We all know what happened in Monsey on Motzei Shabbos of Hanukkah, at a very innocent, simple Hanukkah party, Hasidic Hanukkah party that was going on, where an intruder came in, and he stabbed 5 people. And unfortunately, this hatred is really nothing new. It's really not new to us. No matter where we lived, we were hated. In fact, between the years 250 CE and 1948, 250 CE and 1948, which is a period of 1,700 years, okay, the Jews in Europe were expelled, not from one country, not from 2, but the Jews in Europe were expelled from England, France, Austria, Germany, Lithuania, Spain, Portugal, Bohemia, Moravia, and 71 other countries. 1,700 years, all of those countries were expelled. That comes to an average of an expulsion every 21 years. Wow. This is nothing new. And, I saw something recently in New York City. If you could see this, I saw this ad, okay, that this is like a billboard, and they're putting up in New York City, they're putting up several of these from the Commission of Human Rights that says, it has pictures of different Jews, and it says on the top, Jewish New Yorkers belong here, anti-Semitism does not. And these billboards are being placed all around New York City. It's a beautiful thing. But this is, this has been going on for so long, and it's picking up now, and it's gaining speed. As you saw from the statistics before, the difference between 2014 and 2019 as far as the FBI hate crimes that were reported, it's awful. It's awful. And the question that we all have to ask is, why is this happening? Okay, why is this happening to us? What's the Jewish take? Okay, there are actually, I saw in several articles. There's really like 5 or 6 different reasons. Okay, that the world says for anti-Semitism as to why Jews are hated. Here are some of them. The Jews have too much money. That's one of the main reasons why Jews are hated. Another reason why we're hated is because we killed Jesus. They said, you killed Jesus, so the whole world hates the Jews. Okay? Other people say that, well, they're outsiders. The Jews are outsiders. They're different than the rest of society. They're just different, so therefore we hate them. However, when you really, really think about any of these claims, none of them hold water, and none of them can really be true. And I'm not going to get into, there's articles and articles about why none of these claims could really be true, but we're not going to get into that tonight. We just want to discuss what is the Torah take on all of this. And, if you take a look at your sheets, the first page, the Gemara tells us something fascinating. The Gemara in Shabbos tells us that it's discussing Har Sinai and discussing different references to the word of Har Sinai. And it says, my Har Sinai, what is the reason that Har Sinai, where the Torah was given, has the name Har Sinai, Mount Sinai? And one of the answers given is as follows. It says, Har Sheyarda Sina Le'umos Ha'olam Alav. Because the word Sinai has a similarity, has a correlation to the word Sinah, which means hatred. And the Gemara is telling us that is where the hatred for the Jewish people began, at Har Sinai. And Rashi explains right below, he says, Sina la'akum, hatred to the nations, shelo kiblu bo Torah, because they did not accept the Torah. That's why. That's why there's hatred. That's what Rashi says. The Yaakov explains further. He says, and I'll read it in the English for the sake of time, he says that they hate us, as it says in the Medrash, due to the Torah and the mitzvos that we fulfill. As a result of that, they hate us more. They hate us more than other nations. They hate us more because of the Torah that they fulfill. And the Rambam said this unbelievably. I didn't put it on your sheet, but the Rambam in Igeres Haman, in his letter where he wrote this unbelievable, beautiful letter to the Jews of Taman, and he said to the Jews of Yemen, and he was giving them chizuk in what they were dealing with over there. And he says the following thing. He says that Hashem made us special through his laws and decrees. That's for us, for the Jewish people. The other nations recognize our superiority because we are guided by his rules and his statutes. As a result, the nations of the world become terribly envious of us. That's the words of the Rambam, jealousy. They become envious of us. Because of the Torah, all the kings of the earth stirred up hatred and jealousy against us. So it's because of the Torah, because they did not accept the Torah, because they wished that they had the Torah. Therefore, they're jealous of us, and that is the reason for all of this hatred. I want to quote to you something that, a quote from the book Hitler Speaks by Hermann Rauschning, who's talking about different things that Hitler said during his reign. Listen to the following quote. He says this from Adolf Hitler himself. "The Jews have inflicted 2 wounds on mankind, circumcision on its body and conscience on its soul." 2 things, circumcision on the body and conscience on the soul. "They are Jewish inventions. I," he's talking about himself, "am freeing humanity from the shackles of the soul, from the degrading suffering caused by the false vision called conscience and ethics."
Wow.
Says Adolf Hitler himself. I am freeing, what did he say? Where's the line? I am freeing humanity from the shackles of the soul. As if the soul is this like terrible thing. From the shackles of the soul, from degrading suffering caused by the false vision called conscience and ethics. A hatred for ethics. A hatred for what's proper. Hitler understood full well that the Jewish people represent ethics, they represent morals, and he wanted to free the world from morals and ethics. This is a quote from Adolf Hitler. There was a reverend by the name of Edward Flannery from the National Council of Catholic Bishops who stated the following thing. Listen to this quote. He said, "Hatred of the Jew is the greatest hatred in human history. It was Judaism that brought the concept of a God-given universal moral law into the world. Willingly or not, the Jew carries the burden of God in history, and for this has never been forgiven." For this has never been forgiven. Because this is from Reverend Edward Flannery, who states that because of the moral law that we represent, the morality, the ethics, the high standard, because of that, the world hates us, and we've never been forgiven. There's a story that I heard recently where when the Nazis came into the town of Lublin, the famous town of Lublin, which housed the yeshiva, the famous yeshiva Chachmei Lublin. Many people know about it because of Rav Moshe Shapiro, who was the Rosh Yeshiva who started the Daf Yomi movement, which is so famous today, and the yeshiva Chachmei Lublin, which was a very premier yeshiva in Europe. The Nazis came in, and I heard this recorded at our Rosh Yeshiva. Rabbi Neumann said he saw this in a memoir from somebody who was there, who said that when the Nazis came into the yeshiva, Chachmei Lublin, there were many bookshelves, as you could imagine, with Sfarim, and there was Sifrei Torah, and there were boxes and boxes of Sfarim, and there were people in the yeshiva as well. This fellow who was there said that the first thing the Nazis did when they came into the yeshiva was, before going to the people, they took the Sfarim, and they took the Torahs, and they took them, and they got rid of them, and they burnt them right outside. That was the most important thing for them to get rid of. Because that Torah, that's what it represents. The Torah, the greatness, the high levels, and that's what they hated. And so if you think about this for a minute, I guess one can say that if you want to stop anti-Semitism, if we had to stop the Shiur right here, we want to stop anti-Semitism, we want to put an end to this, what should we do? I guess we should throw away the Torah. I guess we should just get rid of it. I mean, that's what they hate, right? They hate the Torah, they hate the ethics, they hate the morals, okay? So, if we want to stop it, forget if God will be happy about it or not, or whatever it is. Put that aside for a moment. But if we want to stop anti-Semitism, isn't the approach to just get rid of it? Let's integrate ourselves in society more, okay? Let's drop our values. Let's drop the values, let's drop the morals. Let's become more a part of society and take on their morals and values, and then they won't hate us. Right? Doesn't that make sense? And in fact, many Jews throughout history held of such a belief. For 5 centuries, the Spanish Jews were flourishing professionally, economically, everything, politically. They were doing great. Yet in 1391, all of a sudden there's this anti-Jewish violence that's going on in Spain. And what was the response of most of the Jews? What was the response? Hey, let's convert to Christianity. Great idea, right? Let's convert to Christianity. And over the next 50 years, more than half of Spain's Jews converted to Christianity. More than half of Spain's Jews converted. They gave in. They said, forget it. You hate us. We're going to convert to Christianity. Did that accomplish the goal? No. In April of 1492, we know what happened. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, okay, they proclaimed the verdict of expulsion where the Jews had to leave, convert, or be burned at the stake. Those were your options. Okay? And the unfortunate reality, okay, is that this is really, this is really what's going on today as well. Okay? I don't know about people converting to Christianity or not. I don't think that's so popular. But the intermarriage rates, you look at the intermarriage rates, and it's true, there are many people who just don't know, and they don't understand it is true. However, by the Pew Research Center, okay, they did a study. This came out in 2013. Okay, they said, listen to this, that before 1965, 9% of Jews intermarried. Not bad. Okay, I mean, it's not good. Before 1965. 1970, 17%. Were 17% intermarried. By 1990, 20 years later, the numbers were up to 43%. And by 2013, 58% of Jews are intermarried. And if you take out the Orthodox community, 71% of Jews today are intermarried. 71%. In fact, before I moved here and I was working in outreach, I was working for Torah at Stony Brook University as the campus rabbi. And I had there were about 3,000 Jews on campus there. And I would have learning sessions, one-on-one individual learning sessions with about, I would say 25 to 30 students a week. Okay? And at one time I decided, I was getting into that, I was wondering about this stuff. So I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I decided that I'm going to take an informal, an informal survey of the students that I learn with and ask them if they plan on marrying somebody Jewish. Straight up. I'm going to bring it up in the learning session, and do you plan on marrying somebody Jewish? Just straight up. I'm asking the question. I decided I built up the guts. I'm asking the question. So that's it. I said over the course of this week, I'm doing my study, then I'm going to publish my study, and everyone's going to, no, I'm just kidding. But, I'm going to do that for the next week, ask all the students. And I was shocked to find out that of the 30 students that I learned with, out of 3,000, and these were the students, these are the dedicated ones, these are the ones who actually committed themselves to learning with a rabbi once a week. I mean, stop me, think about that, that's unbelievable. They agreed, until they didn't have to, they agreed to come learn with a rabbi once a week. The other, 2,900 whatever didn't. And of those 30 students, I believe it was 2 that told me that they would marry Jewish. Of those 30 students, I believe it was 2. And they were such sincere, sweet students. They were. But I said, Rabbi, why? Why should I marry Jewish? I love him. Why should I marry Jewish? What's the difference? She's such a special girl. What's the difference? So that's the world that we live in. So if we think that this only happened in the times of Spain, that the Jews wanted to intermarry, it's not true. Okay, the Jews wanted to convert and wanted to become part and parcel and one with the non-Jews. That's not true. That's what's going on now as well. And seemingly, as we said before, one would think that this is a great idea if we want to stop anti-Semitism. But you got to see the following thing. Okay, if you go to the next page, page number 2 of your sheet, there's a pasuk in Devarim where Moshe Rabbeinu, right before Moshe Rabbeinu passes away, he's giving brachos to Klal Yisrael, and he says the following thing: Vayishkol Yisrael betach badad ein Yaakov el eretz dagan v'tirosh af shamav yarfu tal. And Israel, this is a quote from Moshe Rabbeinu speaking, and Israel shall dwell secure, alone, in the likeness of Yaakov, in a land of grain and wine. Even his heavens shall drip with dew. It's a bracha to Klal Yisrael that they should dwell securely. And it uses the word in the pasuk badad, alone. And the Nitziv, Rav Naftali Tzvi Berlin, in the 1800s, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Volozhin Yeshiva, he said something unbelievable. Unbelievable. And we'll read it in the English here. So what does it mean alone in the pasuk? It's a very strange word, that the Klal Yisrael is going to be alone. What is that? Is that a curse? Is that a blessing? What's Moshe doing? What's he saying to us? Says the Netziv, alone means separate and distinguished by themselves. This was the midah and request of Yaakov. It says in the Gemara, Eicha yashva badad. We read that on Tisha B'Av, on the night of Tisha B'Av. Eicha yashva badad. Alas, I sit alone, referring to Yerushalayim, badad, alone, that Yerushalayim is by themselves, empty. This means the desire of Hashem is that the Jewish people should remain separate and not mix with the nations of the world. They should be alone. The Jewish people should be alone. When they do this, they will live in honor and in tranquility. However, now that they destroyed this and did not guard their appropriate state and became mixed with the non-Jews, they will become separate a different way. The nations of the world will separate us from them. And this is the meaning of Eicha Yashva Badad. Says the Netziv the following, I'm not making this up. The Netziv says, and this is straight from him, and he has a whole lengthy essay about it. I didn't put it all on the sheet. But he says that Klal Yisrael is supposed to be separate. Hashem wants us to remain separate and distinct. That's what Yaakov Avinu wanted. That's what Hashem said to Avram Avinu when Hashem said, Ki ger yiyazaracha be'eretz lo lahem, that you're going to be a ger, you're going to be a convert, literally means a stranger, in a land that's not yours. That's what Klal Yisrael is supposed to be. Separate, distinct from the rest of the world. But the Netziv goes further and he's telling us, however, when we don't follow that, and when we decide that, you know what, we don't want to be separate. We want to be like with everybody else. We want to follow what everybody else is doing. Then Hashem says, you know what, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that you're separate. So Hashem says, you know what, those people that you're trying to mix in together with, those people that you're trying to become one with, they're the ones who are going to push you out. And that's what happened by the Spanish Inquisition, as we said earlier. And that's what happened by Nazi Germany. That's what happens in every single place where Klal Yisrael wants to become one with the people around them. And I read a story, unbelievable story. I read this on ish.com. Basically, like the more we're trying to water down our values. Okay, the more we're trying to water down our values, they're going to push us away, and they continue to push us away. The question is, what do we do about it? And there's a fellow by the name of Sanad Segedi. This fellow, he spoke at the Eish Torah conference in South Africa. Fellow Sanad Segedi. Who's Sanad Segedi? This guy, okay, when he was a 20-year-old student in 2003 in college in Hungary, he co-founded a political party called the Jabok Party. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. The Jobbik Party, which was built on the foundation and built on the principles of hating Jews. That was this party. This fellow, Sanad Segedi, and he founded this party. And initially it was just a bunch of college kids, and what was the big deal? But it started gaining popularity, and more, as you know, with the college kids, they all started joining in. And they actually became so strong that they became the second largest political party in Hungary. And that was in 2012. And at that time, the other party, okay, was trying to kind of knock them out. So they were digging up all kinds of research about them. Okay, we're familiar with how that goes in politics, right? So they were digging up all kinds of research, and they discovered, get this, that this guy, Sanad Segedi, who is speaking out, going all across Hungary, speaking out against Jews, they discovered that he was Jewish. And they start calling him out on it. And they start announcing it to the news, and et cetera, that he's Jewish. And he said, this is ridiculous, but he wanted to set it straight to the world. So to clarify the rumor and to make sure that it's all not true, he sat down with his maternal grandmother and he said, we're not Jewish, right? And at that time, she rolled up her sleeve. And she showed her number. And she said that she had survived Auschwitz, and she had a tattoo on her arm, and she admitted that she was Jewish, but she said, after the Shoah, I decided that I'm not going to be Jewish anymore. After the Shoah, I decided I'm not Jewish anymore, and she closed that chapter of her life, and she said, forget it, and she didn't teach her daughter that she's Jewish, and she didn't teach her kids and her grandkids, and nobody ever knew that they were Jewish. Well, now, he was stuck. And Sanat Zagadi, he's stuck. He's preaching all this anti-Jewish stuff. Now he's Jewish. He doesn't know what to do about it. He was in denial for a long time. He decided, you know what? He decided that he has to meet a real Jew. He said, I actually never met a real Jew. So I hate Jews, but I never met one. So I don't even know what they look like, right? So I'm going to go find a real Jew, and I want to find out about how bad they really are. That's what he wants to find out. So he Googled Budapest rabbi. And he found a Chabad rabbi, okay, in Budapest, and he reaches out to the Chabad rabbi and he says, I want to come talk to you, I'm Jewish. So the Chabad rabbi says, you're crazy. Like, it's like, you're crazy, like you hate Jews. And he was actually very scared, the rabbi. It's like, I don't want this guy, this must be some kind of prank, and he's going to come, he's going to do something in the shul. But either way, the rabbi gave him an appointment. And he said, Sanat Zagadi said that he came for the appointment, and he said, I thought that the rabbi was just, as soon as I got there, I thought he was going to throw me out. He said, but something even worse happened. He actually made me stay. And he actually opened up a sefer, and we started learning. And he made me learn. And we started learning Torah, and he said I enjoyed it, and he came back, and he said eventually he came to the synagogue where he initially came in. He was holding the siddur upside down, but he continued coming, started keeping Shabbos, started keeping kosher, and now he's a religious Jew. And Sanat Zagadi said as follows, and now actually he asked, I forgot who he asked the Av Beis Din in Budapest, how can he do tshuva? Amazing for what he did. And the Av Beis Din told him as follows. He said that he suggested that he goes around and speaks in schools and campuses, etc., taking back the word that he said all those years and talking about how great the Jewish people are. And that's what he's been doing. And he said the following thing in one of his speeches. He said, what makes somebody anti-Semitic? He said that it's so strange. He said, because I had never met a Jewish person in my life. So why do people hate Jews? He said, anti-Semitism cannot be rational. It stems from frustration and depression. I did not meet the kind of monsters portrayed in anti-Semitic circles, he said. But it's just because of this frustration and this depression that it came out. I don't know if he fully understood where that depression is really coming from, like we said before from the Gemara, from that jealousy and from that hatred towards the ethics and the morals. But listen to how he concludes. He said, the only thing to do to fight anti-Semitism is to do more to be Jewish. Be proud and definitely do not hide it, he concludes. Those are the words of an individual who was the biggest anti-Semite in all of Hungary, hated Jews, preaching to college kids everywhere. Just remain Jewish and continue doing what we're doing. And this, that's really what we're supposed to be doing. That's what the Nesiv is telling us. We have to remain separate. We have to remain separate and do our thing exactly how Hashem wanted it. And the question is why? Why is it so critical? Why is that so important to remain separate? Why is that such an important thing? And the answer really is, that, if we take a look, there's an incredible pasuk in Yeshaya, on page number 3 that says as follows, and many people are familiar with the pasuk, but right at the top it says, Vayomer nakal mios li eved, lahakim eshifte Yaakov v'etziri Yisrael lahashiv v'nesaticha la'or goyim lihiyos yeshuasi ad ketzei haaretz. It is too little, Hashem is talking to Yeshaya over here. And he's saying, it's too little that you should be my servant, and that I raise up the tribes of Yaakov and restore the survivors of Israel. Just to teach Kal Yisrael is not enough. I will also make you a light of the nations, that my salvations may reach the ends of the earth. That's our purpose. That's what Hashem was telling Yeshaya. That's your job. That's the job of Kal Yisrael, to teach the rest of the world. It's not just enough to be good Jews. Our job and our purpose is to remain separate in a way where we can actually show these ideals, show our morals, show our ethics to the rest of the world, to be able to teach everybody, to be a light unto the nations, to teach them what is proper and what they should be doing. Rav Schwab said the following. He said, it's not sufficient to Hashem for us to be the only nation that recognizes Hashem. Rather, our goal is to enlighten the entire world regarding Hashem as the one and only God, about his moral law for mankind. That's our purpose. I'm going to tell you a quote, but I'm not going to tell you who said it. I'll tell you at the end. But listen to the following quote. I will insist the Hebrews have contributed more to civilized men than any other nation. What?
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain? No, this is not the quote from Mark Twain, but that's also a good quote. But this is not the quote from Mark Twain. No, but that's a good guess. If I was an atheist and believed in blind eternal fate, I should still believe that fate had ordained the Jews to be the most essential instrument for civilizing the nations. They are the most glorious nation that ever inhabited this earth. They have given religion to 3/4 of the globe and have influenced the affairs of mankind more and more happily than any other nation, ancient or modern. Anybody know? Any guesses? That quote was said by the second president of the United States, by John Adams.
Wow.
John Adams said the Jews are the most essential instrument for civilizing the nations. Exactly like the Pasuk in Yeshaya is telling us. Our role is to remain separate, to be this light amongst the nations, to show everybody, to show the world the proper morals and the proper ethics. Rabbi Shapiro quoted something unbelievable the other week from the pulpit in Shiur in North Miami Beach. Unbelievable. He quoted this letter that I'm about to read to you. Now, this is a letter that came from, that it was being forwarded around, that came from the operations manager of the stadium in England where the Siyam HaShas in England was held. Okay? And this comes right after the Siyam HaShas. She writes as follows. Dear Siyum team, it is 2 a.m. as I write this to you, having just gone home after the Siyum. On behalf of all the team, I must express our deepest pride and pleasure at being given the opportunity to host the Siyum event. When we were first approached in July by the committee, we had absolutely no idea what type of event this was, nor what to expect in terms of the program or what was actually going to happen. But working closely with the team, we began to gain an understanding, and as the date approached, I briefed our internal staff as to the nature of the event. However, nothing could really have prepared us for what happened. 6,748 tickets were scanned at the door, aside from the top table rabbis who entered via the VIP entrance, and of course, all your volunteers and crew. There are a number of points that have blown us away. Number one, we have a security cupboard in which we allow guests to deposit anything deemed dangerous or inappropriate. At an event this size, we would normally have anything between 700 and 1,000 items placed in that cupboard. But tonight, we held nothing. Number two, there was not a single incidence of drunkenness, boisterousness, or rowdy behavior. Not a single one. I have been at the arena for 28 months and accommodated over 300 events in that time. Never have we had no incidents. Never.
Wow.
And number three, all the team were blown away by the amount of thank yous that we received at the end of the evening. I actually thought that everybody had been instructed to do this. This is like some kind of a game. I am devastated. Listen to this. I am devastated that the Siyum only takes place once every 7 years. This event was a delight for all of us. Signed, Becky Siret, Operations Manager of the SSE Arena.
Wow.
That's what it means. That's what it means to be a light unto the nations. That's what it means to be separate. That's what it means to show our ethics and our morals and our values, which are at a higher standard, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that. We should only uphold that to the highest degree, because that's our purpose. That's what we're here for. We're here to show the world, we're here to show Klal Yisrael that, not just Klal Yisrael, but the entire world, that message and that point.
We have to be role models. We have to
Exactly. We have to be.
made the right way, so they don't point the finger, or they point the finger and say, that's a Jew, or look.
That's right. That's right. It's the role model, right? The role model concept. That's what we're supposed to be for the rest of the world. And that's why the Netziv was telling us before that when we start to become, when we water down our values, when we start cutting the Torah out, cutting the yarmulke out, cutting the this out, cutting that, and start becoming one with the others, then Hashem says, you know what I have to do? I have to have them force you out, and they have to remind you of what your mission is. Hashem's not doing it to punish us, not like angry punishment. Hashem is just saying, this is the way it's supposed to be. I need you as my teachers. I need you as the people influencing the world. That's what Hashem is saying, and therefore you have to be separate. I want to share with you an unbelievable story. You know, in New York State, a number of years back, I don't know the actual year of this, when this took place. I don't know. I'm not even going to guess. But New York State had a big dilemma a number of years back. That basically, there's a lot of people living in New York State, especially in New York City. It's very congested for anybody who lives there. Okay, that's one of the reasons we got out of there, thank God. Okay, it is you can't even find a parking spot. When my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Grumblatt, okay, who used to run our yeshiva here, Yeshiva Torah Chaim in Miami, he moved back to New York, and he said one time, that after he moved back to New York, he said he didn't really fully realize he was back in New York until a few months in, when he was driving in Brooklyn on Ocean Parkway, and he needed to park. And he ended up parking in a double parked spot while parallel parking. Okay, so parallel parking in a double parked spot, he said that's when he realized, now I'm back in New York. Okay, this is really New York. So, but in New York, it's very congested. And there's obviously a lot of energy that is consumed. Okay, and New York State had a very big problem, that in order to facilitate all the energy supply, what they really needed to do was to build another power plant, which was going to cost them somewhere around $2 to $3 billion. And they said, we're not going to do that. So he decided, listen, here's what we'll do. To save money, let's attempt to get others to conserve energy. And they offered, they set up this grant from New York State that they're going to offer any nonprofit organization in New York State a grant to pay to upgrade their electric that they have, to upgrade their bulbs in their institutions. They're going to use high efficiency, low energy fluorescent bulbs, and that's going to be an upgrade. It's going to use less energy, and they figure if they pay for it, it's okay, it's going to cost them a few $1 million, but it won't be as expensive as the new power plant, and everybody's going to go for it because they're going to want this grant. So my yeshiva that I studied in, Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim in Queens, a non-for-profit organization in New York, they heard about this grant. They said, this is amazing. Okay, let's get on this, and let's get this grant. And so they got approved. They spoke to the state. They got approved for the grant, and the state told them to get a quote. They got a quote. An electrician came down, gave them a quote for $75,000 to upgrade all the electric in the building as per their terms. And the state agreed, we're going to pay $75,000. And they were so excited. Turns out, after a lot of working and people in the office were speaking to different electricians and different people and different organizations, and it ended up that they found an electrician that was able to do the same work for $60,000. So they said, this is great. They're giving us a grant for $75,000. We found somebody to do it for $60,000. So it's perfect. Okay, so we're going to keep the additional $15,000. Fine. So when the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Henoch Leibowitz, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, heard about what was going on, he said, no. He said, no. He said, we can't keep the $15,000. He said, the state only gave us that money to do the electric work. We're going to get the electric work for $60,000. It's not right for us to hold on to the additional $15,000. I don't think he would have held that that's like stealing, but it's not appropriate. He said, we must return the $15,000 to the state. He said, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. So he got on the phone, and he calls up the energy department, the New York State Energy Department. And he speaks to, there's a clerk that picks up the phone, And he says to the clerk, he said, listen, my name is Rabbi Leibowitz. I'm the dean of the Rabbinical Seminary of America in Queens. And we got a grant for $75,000 to fix the electric, but it only cost us $60,000, so I want to return $15,000 to New York State. And there's silence. And the fellow on the other line does not know what to do with this question. In fact, he says back to Rabbi Leibowitz, he says, I've never heard that request before. No one has ever called us to such a thing. He says, I don't even know where you should make the check out to. Like, which department does it go to? Which account? Like, I said, I don't know. He said, let me put you on hold. I'm going to go speak to my manager. Goes to the manager, comes back a few minutes later. I spoke to my manager. She said, no one has ever made such a request. We don't know where it should go. So you know what? Give us a few days. We're going to speak to the higher-ups, and we're going to find out. We're going to have an answer for you. Okay. Rosh Hashiva calls back a few days later. They said, sorry, Rabbi, we still don't have an answer. People still haven't given us. We don't know which account it's supposed to go to. Give us another few days. He calls back a few days later, and again, Rabbi, we've asked everybody. It's never happened before. No one's ever returned money from a grant. We don't know where because we don't know what to do with it. So the Rosh Hashiva said, listen. He said, this is what I'm going to do, okay? He said, I am going to make out a check for $15,000, and I'm going to make it out to New York State. Straight up, okay? I'm going to send it to your office, and you guys figure out what to do with it, okay? But $15,000 back to you, back to New York State, and you figure out what to do with it. That was the close on that story. We're going to fast forward a number of years. And there was a big meeting that was going on in the governor's office in New York, in which there was a potential bill that was being proposed. I'll explain later, but it is unknown to the sources of the story what that bill was. But there was a bill that was being proposed that was a question of that posed a question of ethics and posed a question of honesty. And the bill was bordering on not being super ethic, not being super honest. And the people in the governor's office were going back and forth discussing this bill. And finally they asked the governor, Mr. David Patterson at the time, they asked him, they said, Mr. Patterson, what are we going to do? Are we approving this bill or are we not approving the bill? And this is what Mr. Patterson said. He said, we're not approving the bill because this bill would not pass the Rabbi Leibowitz test. And they said, what? Mr. Patterson, you're not Jewish. Mr. Patterson, you don't have a rabbi. What in the world are you talking about? What are you talking about? Who's your rabbi? Who's this Rabbi Leibowitz? What are you saying? And he said, let me explain. He said, a number of years ago, I was a clerk in the energy department of New York State right over here. And I received a phone call from a Rabbi Leibowitz, who's the dean of this seminary in New York. And he had this crazy request to return $15,000 because he didn't feel that it was honest to keep it. And we didn't know what to do with it, and he explains the whole story to everybody that was there. And after that whole event, and reflecting upon what happened, I decided in my mind that Rabbi Leibowitz must be the most honest person in New York State. And he said that from now on, I made up in my mind that if I had any test of honesty in my life, it would have to pass the Rabbi Leibowitz test. This was from the governor, David Patterson of New York. And how do we know that the story is true? Because somebody that was in that meeting wanted to find out more about this Rabbi Leibowitz, wanted to find out more about Rav Henoch Leibowitz, and they discovered the yeshiva that he was the yeshiva of. They called the office of the yeshiva, and they told them over this whole story what happened. I heard the story firsthand a few days ago from Rabbi Chaim Schwartz, who was the executive director of the yeshiva at the time, who was one of the people who fielded that phone call. So all the facts are real. The governor of New York, you stop and you think about it. At that time, the Rosh Hashiva was just doing what he thought was right. He was doing what he thought was right. He thought he was doing what was honest, what made sense as far as honesty and proper ethics and proper morals at the highest standard. And he did not, he never in his life settled for anything less than the highest standard. And that's what he was doing here. He didn't know of any fanfare. He didn't know that this clerk he was speaking to was going to end up becoming the governor. That's not why he did it. He had no idea. He just was doing what was right. And as a result of that, you see this concept of being an Or L'Goyim, being a light unto the nations. You see, look at what they learned. Look at what they gained. Look at what they gained out of this. And as a result, the entire New York State was spared from a bill that that may have been dishonest and may have brought down the values and the morals. And this idea, the more that we stick to our beliefs, okay, the more that we remain separate, the more that we just do our thing. This is something that the anti-Semites, believe it or not, the anti-Semites, as we said from Hitler before, really understood. They understood full well. If you take a look on page number 3 right in the middle, the Gemara tells us something unbelievable, that Haman said the following line. Haman says right in the middle there, it says that I'll read in English, it says there's one people, and he's referring to Klal Yisrael, and Rabbi said that there was none who knew how to slander like Haman. Haman knew how to bring people down. And he said the following to Achashverosh, let us destroy them. This is at the point in the story where Haman wants to destroy the Jewish people. And he's proposing this plan to Achashverosh. Achashverosh said to him, I am afraid of their God, because lest he do to me as he did to those who stood against them before me. Achashverosh understood full well what happened to all the previous anti-Semites before him. They all tried to wipe out the Jews, and they themselves were destroyed by Hashem. And Achashverosh was scared. He was scared of that, and he didn't want to kill the Jews. However, Haman said to him, they have been asleep with respect to the mitzvos. This is the pasuk in the Megillah that says, Yeshno am echad. There is a nation that is mefuzar and mufurad, that is spread amongst us. The Gemara tells the word Yeshno comes from the word Yashen, which means to sleep. And Haman was saying that they are sleeping. They're sleeping from Torah, they're sleeping from mitzvos, and since they're sleeping and they're not doing the appropriate things, now you have a chance to destroy them. You're not going to be like the previous anti-Semites. You, Achashverosh, are going to be successful because the Jewish people aren't doing what they're supposed to. Haman understood this full well. However, as we know, as the story continued, as the story went on, we know that Haman ends up seeing he has to walk around Mordechai on this horse and dress him up, and the tide begins to turn, and he goes back to his wife and his advisors, and he says to them, he says to Zeresh and everybody, what are we supposed to do? This is such a terrible day. And on the bottom of page 3 it says as follows, the advisors said to him that, they said, Ki nafal tipo lefanav, that you're going to fall. What does it mean that you're going to fall? Ki nafal tipo, it says it twice, nafal tipo, you're going to fall 2 times. The wise men continued. They said to him, but you shall fall before him. So Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi said, what does this mean? Why are there 2 fallings mentioned here? The wise men said to Haman, this Jewish nation is compared to the dust of the earth, and it is also compared to the stars in heaven. This teaches you that when they descend to the dust, but when they rise to the stars. This is what the Gemara is telling us. Zeresh, Haman's wife, and all of his advisors understood this. They understood that when Klal Yisrael is on the up, when Klal Yisrael is doing what's right, they're doing the Torah, they're doing mitzvos, they're remaining separate, they're doing their thing, then they're compared to the stars, and you can't reach them. You can't get them. You can't do anything to them. However, it goes the other way as well. When we're not doing what we're supposed to, and when the Klal Yisrael is becoming part of the entire world, intermingling with everybody that's around them, then they're compared to the sand that can be destroyed very easily. And that's what Haman was trying to do. And Baruch Hashem, we were successful, and we have been successful, and will continue to be successful. And the message, I think, that's appropriate, we titled the speech, Haman Hatred and How to Respond. So how do we respond? Bottom line, how do we respond, and what's the message to ourselves and to our families? The message is Torah. The message is Torah. That's the bottom line. That's why Har Sinai is called Sinai, because the hatred, from the word sinna, the hatred started from there. Because they wanted the Torah. They wanted the Torah, they wanted the mitzvos. The Netziv is telling us the more that we remain separate, the more that we remain our own people, separate with a high level of morals and a high level of ethics, doing what we're supposed to, being a light unto the nations, then nobody could touch us. Nobody could destroy us. This is a promise from Hashem. Nobody could do anything to us, and that is the answer. That is how to respond. We respond and we teach our families to be mechazek our mitzvos, strengthen our mitzvos, strengthen our Torah learning, strengthen our Jewish identity, as Sinad Sagadi, I hope I pronounced his name right, said in that speech. An individual who was such an anti-Semite and ended up learning about his Jewish roots, and he said, the answer to anti-Semitism is to stay close to your religion, remain separate, remain with your Jewish values, and continue building on them. And Bezrat Hashem, as we approach Rosh Chodesh Adar, coming up very soon, and we're approaching Purim, and we're going to be thinking about Amalek, we're going to be thinking about Haman, we're going to think about all these things that that was attempted against us. We should also think about our success and how we've made it through all of these years. And we put down all of our enemies, we beat them, and we're going to continue to do that through the strength of Torah and through the strength of mitzvos. And Be'ezrat Hashem, everybody should have a beautiful and a freilich and not Chanukah, I'm sorry, I am very, very tired. A Purim, a beautiful and a freilich and Purim. Thank you very much again, so much for hosting. And I heard that if there's any leftovers, then Ms. Kopel is not going to be happy. Okay? Everybody here is going to finish it. But if not, then I'll take it to the Shiur. Anyways, thank you so much, everybody. And does anybody have any questions? Any questions, comments, arguments? No? Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you so much. My pleasure, my pleasure. Brought it to you.